episode of the Dealer Playbook Podcast. So excited for you to be here for this one because we are hitting the non-prime conversation from a different angle. I'm joined by none other than Ted Lamb, the CEO and founder of AITHR, building some really cool software, has a cool history in the auto industry, and actually a really cool story about why he decided to build this software for dealers. Ted, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Appreciate it. Always been a big fan of Dealer Podcasts. Being in the industry for so long, it's tough. Now that we're kind of away from it, you always want to stay in the know. And I listen to your show a lot to ensure that I have, I'm not irrelevant anymore. The information I have doesn't expire. So I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate you tuning in. So you've basically been in the industry for years and years. You fell backwards into it, like I think all of us did. Not everybody's like, I want to grow up and be in car sales. But talk to me a little bit about your journey in the industry, coming from dealer side over to building a software company, and also like what led you to build the product that you have.
So industry is small. It is fun. You're right. We all fell back into it. I mean, I don't think when I was growing up, I don't think car salesperson was top 500 when I was 5 years old. So yeah, I definitely fell into it. But man, I truly loved it. As soon as I got into the industry, it's like it made sense. And one thing I liked is because I have a lot of energy, and most people idle at here. I'm like idling at 90 typically. So I'm a little bit different. But no, being in the industry, I've done everything from salesperson. I've been a subprime finance manager, a finance manager. Every single position I've done it, but it's truly the non-prime position that I love the most. And the reason why I did is because one, it's one of the first, and I think it's going to pick up now in the industry a lot. It's one of the first positions that you could genuinely deal with the customer from the very start all the way to the end. So you don't have to meet, a greeter, a salesperson, a sales manager, and then you pass them to finance. So I hated that. I actually loved the whole control. Not only that, I found that the more time I got to spend and learned about someone, the easier that I'm actually going to be able to help them. So I truly enjoyed the process. But, first of all, joining into the industry in 04 to 08, I was a top rep. I always had a niche for sales, and it never failed me. But I was living the American dream, and I laugh about that today. It was not as funny then, but I was making I was making $130,000 a year. But the American dream, I was spending $250. So 04, 05, 06, 07, it's pretty easy for it to catch up. And then in 08, it happened. And that's when I realized that I'm sitting here going, man, there is not a lot of options out there for people that really actually want to take that next step in credit. And the reason I say that is because there's two types of clients I look at. One is, I know I have bad credit. So what? Everybody does. Ha, 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 ha. That's your traditional type. But then there's actually a big half of that client that's like me. It's not like we're bad people. It's not like we intentionally did it. The lack of education is for one side, but the amount of there's no resources out there to really help. So I made myself a promise. I wanted to get really, really good at it. And when I mean get good at it, it's learning everything about it. What can I help a customer? Even if Michael came to my client to my office today, and I couldn't help Michael. Michael's not leaving without anything. Michael's leaving with advice. Michael's leaving with how to rebuild it without the vehicle first, and ethical type of strategies. So the reason we built it is because, one day I was at the dealership, and this is in 2020 in October. This is the best month. This is the reason why there is AITHR. So 2020 in October, I'm in my office, and I had two of my subprime managers come up to me and said, "Hey Ted, we don't have it. We're going into October. We don't have enough vehicles." And I said, "How is that possible? We have 252 on the lot." I was like, we were the only dealership that bought cars during pandemic. So we've never had an issue with inventory. So long story short, I jumped in there, and I wanted to show them that we can actually do it if you just take time. The whole point of me getting mad at them, because they're doing about 8 to 10 deals a month, but with 250 cars on the lot, I think they should be doing double. So I wanted to show them best practice. I said, just because a file's tough lots of negative equity does not mean that you just don't take, you don't help those clients. Don't just take the easier ones first. So I said,
Right.
submit the
Right.
thing, and I wanted to show them that it was. So when I went in, started showing people that there actually was, that there actually was a way to do it better. I just decided to just jump in. So long story short, I'm jumping in and I'm showing these guys that it is doable, and it's not as hard as we perceived it to be. Did I lose connection here? Oh, no. Sorry. Good. So we created the thing. So we're looking at everything, and I said, no, there's got to be a faster way, because right now, Michael, if you were to Google, how do I become a subprime manager for automotive, there is nothing out there. So then I figured and I calculated timing's everything. And as I was mentioning to you, your playbook and the company that you created at that perfect time, it's when the market needed it. And I was like, just like this company, for us, for me at AITHR, it was really, really tough for me to quit the automotive industry to go into it, because one,
Right.
I was doing financially really well, but more importantly, it's an area I've never looked into before. However, when I calculated everything, I was like the CERB, so every Canadian was getting $2,000 a month. Every Canadian. So I was like, okay. And then they got used to it. For 2 years, they're getting that 2,000.
Right.
So I calculated that it was going to end at a time. Interest rates are going to climb up. And with interest rates climbing up and everything else, that to me was the perfect timing for us to do AITHR. Plus, there was no education out there. So I wanted to do two birds with one stone. One, I wanted to help people rebuild their credit with the new wave that is coming up. Just because people's credit changed doesn't mean their standards have. And our system is going to be able to actually give you that process. So, you and I were speaking before, where if you had good credit, when you have good credit, you walk into a store, you pick the car that you want, you drive that car, you buy that car. Super simple. So to those that are listening, that is like, hey, what's subprime and what's the subprime process? It's a lot different. You first have to go in and you start with the credit check. So it's actually completely backwards. Start with the credit check. We find out what the banks can approve you for, and then we start the journey.
Right.
But what gets complicated sometimes is when you're adding negative equity. So what you owe on your vehicle and what the dealership's giving you, that difference, it might not fit into the next vehicle that you're looking for, in terms of whether it's loan to value, the booking doesn't work, or your payment call doesn't work. And that's why it takes time. So Michael, you come in, it's not as easy as, hey, I have bad credit. You do a pre-approval and you're like, hey, I got $500 a month. What's so hard about this? But Michael, it's at 17%. You owed an extra $7,000 from the previous loan. So now we only have these options, because, and you're like, oh, well, what about that 2010? It's only 7,000. Can I make that work? And I'm like, yes, if I could finance it for longer than 12 months.
Right.
So those are the restrictions. It's payment, it's interest rate. And typically, if you were to come in and you're just a normal client without a system or a tool that can make it faster, we're talking anywhere from 1 to 3 days to complete a process. And that's if we had the right vehicle.
Right.
With AITHR, we can make a deal happen in 2 seconds. And and I pride myself in one thing. I pride myself in the fact that it's car people software built for car people. So like it's a car people build software built for car people. So in my software, it's super simple. If you know how to read approval, if it says approved and you know how to read that on DealerTrack, you're already half approved.
Right.
Come in, type in 4 numbers, we have matches. We have a lot of dealer partners across Canada, and that's what I really, truly pride myself in. So I want to help people. I want to get people in loans. Automotive vehicle loans is a depreciating asset, and it actually does help build your credit faster.
Right.
So now it's no more building deals, it's building rapport, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valuable distinction here, is you're focused on a bigger picture. And, you've mentioned it a couple of times, to help people. I'm doing this to help people. Often when people build companies in automotive, like so for you and I, allied industry professionals, I think is how NADA deems us. You listen to a lot of them and they're like, oh, well, we're on a mission to help dealers do X. Yes, dealers are people, and that's fantastic. But you're also seeing this other picture. You have this different lens that you're looking through because you were once in that situation. And that really resonates with me, right? Because, the thing they don't tell you, I'm obviously born and raised Canada. A year and a bit ago, I moved to the States. You know what they don't tell you is when you move to a different country, you got no credit. So here I am, fully established, own a company, doing well, financially, all these sorts of things. But I really resonate with what you're saying is just because you don't have credit or your credit's, taking a dive or whatever, doesn't mean that your standards doesn't mean that you're not capable. It just means understanding the circumstances with which you have to operate in. And then I love how you're marrying that to, and here's what we can make work. I don't even in other situations I think of, Ted, where I'm a complete laydown. I walk onto any dealership in Canada, pick out any vehicle and I go, that one, black leather interior, let's get it done. I still dislike the fact that we go through that whole process and then finance is the last thing.
It shouldn't be like that, Michael.
Yeah, let me know first. Let me know what I can choose from first would solve so many problems for every car shopper, I feel like.
Not to stay off topic, not to go off topic, but what you said right there was I don't brag about our successes. I am very proud. I am very, very prideful of how we did business.
Right.
Michael, at our store, I had 4 different processes and 4 different ways to serve numbers and 4 different ways to test drive and 4. And the reason why I did that is because I was a top salesperson and I've been number 1 in everything I've done. And I'm not sounding arrogant. It's just because a very long time ago, I just knew that someone wanted to buy something. Okay. They wanted to get to this destination, A to B. And all I did in the auto industry was 75% of those customers, I made it harder for them to get to the destination. 25% of the people love the process. Right. So then I looked at it going, oh, wait a second. Everything is personality based. I trained my team at Calgary Hyundai. For 1 month, you couldn't speak to clients on the floor. And what I trained with you for 30 days in a boardroom is personalities. If a person walked in this way, if they look like this is how we dictate it. Because the prime example that I have is an engineer is a D personality. So they're more quiet, they're reserved, their formality is high. If an engineer walked into a restaurant and they went to order lunch and eat lunch and leave, to them, that's what they want to do. So they sit down, a certain way, they grab their menu, they already know. Waitress comes over, and if the waitress or waiter starts saying, hey, Ted, how's it going? What are you doing after lunch today? Thanks for coming. Why us? Blah, blah, blah. To the engineer, a D personality, this is the worst experience I've ever had. I wanted to come in, I wanted to eat, I wanted to leave. What is this? Ted comes in, and if the waitress goes, hey, Ted, what would you like to eat today? And I'm like, wow, this is horrible service. All you want to do is get me to the point. And then at that very moment, this story, every time I tell this story, as soon as I say this story, I look at my next, people in the industry, because that's typically who you hang out with. And I look at them and I say, so tell me, how does one size fit all in a dealership when that scenario happens every freaking day? Yep. There's 4 personalities out there. There's admin people, there's one type of personality, those guys they're 9 to 5. They need to know what's happening. You have their D personality. These are formality people. These are your accountants, your engineers. And then there's B personality, me. I just want everybody else happy. I don't care if I don't like tacos. If you guys want to eat tacos, let's go. Makes you happy. Right. And then there's an A personality, which is my way or highway. So in my store, 4 ways, 4 styles, 4 numbers. And I find that by doing that, you just allow the customer to take you to the destination. I don't care so back in the day, Michael, would you agree that people had to, when they're buying cars, it was step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Yep. However, with today's industry, personality B wants to go 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Today's dealerships don't allow that. A D personality might go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody has their own style. And what we've done is restricted it because we've held information hostage that people can Google for too long. And now that it just doesn't work. So it's funny that you mentioned that. Well, and it's funny too, because that's actually what led to my second to last purchase experience at a Hyundai store in Edmonton, where I walked onto the lot and said, I want that Palisade.
And the rep says, and how soon do you want it? I said, you didn't hear me. I said, I want that one, that
right there.
Slate gray with the black interior. And okay, come into the office. And I'm already thinking, here we go. Pulls out the 4 square thing. And I got to go back and forth. She went back and forth to the manager so many times that I finally said, how about you just have the manager? Like, how about you just have the manager come here instead of this back and forth thing? How soon are you looking at? Well, I said, maybe you're not paying attention. It's 11:30. I have to pick my kids up from school at 2:30, and I would prefer to do it in that vehicle. And it was just a disaster of a, yeah.
I remember back in the day where, like, this is in 04 when I first started in the industry, a client would be inside the vehicle already, in the showroom, inside the vehicle. And my job, my manager would be like, get them out of the vehicle, bring them to your office, and then we'll get back into that vehicle. So I'm like, but this doesn't make sense. They're in the vehicle, Mazda 3, because they wanted to buy the Mazda 3. They're like, no, they don't. So I had to take them out of the vehicle just to do the interview first, and then I showed them the dealership, and then I can go back to the car. It was just like, the customer was like, this is ridiculous. I just wanted to stay in the car. It took me physically, I don't know, it's crazy.
Right. Let's touch on, you said something earlier I want to just reference back to and get your thoughts and expertise on this. So you said, I mean, in Canada specifically, and I know something similar happened in the United States, basically the government printed a crap ton of money and was giving people a couple $1,000 a month to get us through the pandemic, and people got used to that. But now we're having to pay for it. Inflation, interest rates are hiking, and there's just all sorts of problems. What's your outlook on impact to the market? I read this morning on Auto Remarketing Canada, where they posted something about, this is the first month that Canada's seen a decline in wholesale values or in used car vehicle values. I mean, as it pertains to what you're doing with non-prime and focusing on that market, what do you think's coming for us?
I think it's a scary situation. I really do. I really do feel like the shift into the industry, it's, when I was in non-prime, it's, you would get anywhere from 9.9 all the way up to 40, and it's like pretty evenly spread out. You have the 9s,
right,
10s, 11s. Right now, what I think is going to happen is people got so used for those 2 years of $2,000 a month. I was having tough time hiring people, because for $2,000 a month, this is tax free. You get in your pocket 2 G's. That means I would have to pay someone 3 G's that same month to work to take in the same money. I couldn't find staff. People are like, dude, if I don't work, I get the same thing. I don't have to listen to you, Ted. Yeah, I'm taking that out. You know what I mean? So I feel like trying to get the people back into that workforce, I think it's going to be a matter of time. It's going to be slowing in, but our industry impact, I think it's going to be like this. Again, why I built the software. All of the middle part, the mid-prime, non-prime, there's 3 levels. Near prime, so I would say that's 9 to 12%. And what that means to near prime people, 9 to 12 means about 1 to 1.5 years. If you do a financing, you get back into normal. And then you have your 13% all the way to 27%, 13 to 25. That was the bread and butter of subprime in the past. You got 2 sales of that gentleman. They're going to make out of that client. There's two steps, two different refinances, 2 things to add onto their credit, and then they get into the prime side. And then there's deep subprime. So deep subprime is 26% and up. They've had former repos. It's just a really tough, a lot harder to approve clientele. So what I feel like is going to happen now is you got this new wave, 200,000 to 300,000 of Canadians that have never had bad credit before, okay, never once, are now going into the market where, like I said before, if you were to Google, how do I become a subprime manager in Canada? How do I submit a deal? All this stuff, you'll find nothing. So what we're going to see is dealerships that know how to cater to the subprime market. They're going to do well. There's a huge risk for dealerships that have been doing things one way only, because I don't know what it is with a client that's had bad credit. If you tell them to go and sit into the lounge and wait for 6 to 7 hours for us to find an option, that is normal. That's been drilled into their head by the industry for 20 years.
Right.
But someone like me, if I just got bad credit and I go into a store, you tell Ted to go sit down on that couch for 4 or 5 hours. I'm going to tell you to pound sand. I'm out in 4 or 5 seconds.
Right.
So there's got to be a huge wave that of non-prime clients that are going to be, non-prime departments are going to be being built across Canada, across the States quick. And I feel like there's going to be a huge shortage of people that are going to be able to fill that. That's kind of how I found my gap in. Our software is 4 numbers, and any single person could legitimately use the software. I have trainers that are actually using our software right now to train subprime teams. And the reason why they're using that is they said, what my system does is it saves 6 months of training to get them to have, a portion of that knowledge. So we're able to do that. So yeah, anyway, back to the non-prime. I do think that it's very interesting. I'm having a hard time predicting what it's going to look like in the next 24, but I definitely think that dealerships are going to get challenged. I think a lot of subprime stores that are already doing a lot of the subprime business, if they don't make a change to cater to clients again, I think they're going to be out of business. And then you have a lot of prime companies that are, oh, we don't do subprime here. You can't afford to say that anymore.
Right.
Back in the day, 20% of the business was subprime. If your population of the area that you're in is big enough that 80% you can survive off of, great. But right now, the prediction is it's going to go to 60% subprime or prime, 40% subprime. You're losing another 25% of that bread and butter. You got to go back in. So it is a very interesting time, Michael.
It intrigues me as well from the personnel standpoint. To your comment, I feel the same way. There's going to be an influx of this because it also presents an opportunity, right? If we're also focused on playing the long game and having building lifetime value relationships with customers, a lot of customers will be going through the next year or two in this category, but that they're not always going to be there. And depending on how we service them. So I see a huge opportunity there, to your point. But would you agree, and I might be out in left field and I'm totally open to it, that you can't necessarily in the framework of the way things work today, you can't, there's a lot of dealers that are like, all right, there we go. Let's create a non-prime department. Let's do it. It's like, who's going to run it? Well, we could take our BDC director because they seem to know a lot, and let's make them the non-prime director or is it as easy as that? Is that possible? Or what kind of skill sets do you think are important in order to build out a subprime or a non-prime department successfully?
I love that you said that because it's true. I think that's what a lot of dealerships are going to do. Let's open up a non-prime department, and you're now the guy. It's like I don't know how to deal with it. I think that
I was just doing Facebook posting, Milk, and before that, I was the receptionist.
And that's why if dealers are going to react, I find that this is the first time in a long time where dealerships that have not cared about a huge market that will take over, they have an opportunity to enter in. And the reason why they have the opportunity to enter in now is because, one, if they don't, they're going to be left behind. I find that as the subprime market is going to keep growing, these dealerships, the best thing that they can do is this. They have to start adapting. As you and I have talked about before, it's not about how to get to the sale. If the person wants to do numbers first and they don't test drive, who cares? In today's market, if you look at the most successful retail stores, Apple being one, if you walk into an Apple store, the first thing that you're going to notice is that there's a gentleman standing in the very front of the building. In that very front of the building, that gentleman is not there to stop you to walk in at all. He's designed there, if you have a question, to go ask. It's to make things be easy. Or think about this. At my dealership, not just the Ford personalities, but we had all the vehicles in our showroom turned on. And the reason why it's turned on is because, have you ever walked into an Apple store and you had to ask someone to turn on an iPad for you to check it out?
Right.
And why isn't that? It's because, again, we're trying to make things archaic. I guess the message is going into this year, one, you're going to have to open up to what clients want. Clients want this. Clients want to deal with Ted. Ted, from the start of the sale. And when I first walk in a dealership, you don't have to approach them first. Let them do their thing. It's okay. Just Apple does not panic when they have 70 clients in their store and only 13 of them are being helped. They're not like, oh my God, the ups, everybody go get that up, go say hi. And nobody stays within 6 feet, you know, you don't leave. No, Apple's like, dude, we have the best technology in the world. You're going to come in, you're going to play with it, you're going to win, you're going to want to buy it, and then you come grab us. So subprime, it's not just starting about getting a position, and I really want to stress this because I've always loved training into subprime stuff. It's not about any verbiages I can give you. All right, there's no verbiages, there's no shortcut, there's nothing. What you have to do to cater to subprime is start from the very beginning. And when I say start from the very beginning, that means your processes at your store, if you don't change them, and the stores that are adapting, they're going to make it. And so, as I said before, clients want one thing. They want one thing, which is the ability to deal with one person. Because if I had bad credit, I'd rather tell Ted, not Ted, Mike, Daniel, Sonny, and Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Why, if I wanted to come buy a vehicle and I had bad credit, I have to talk to 5 people? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
2, start the process early. I have hated it when I walked into a store. If I can go get a pre-approval for a mortgage, why can't I go get a pre-approval for a house first? And Michael, when you bought a house, I'm assuming that you bought you bought your house. You didn't just go and walk into a place and say, "I want this house. I'm just going to take it." And I hope the finances work.
No.
How did you do it? How did you do it? You got approved,
pre-approved, and then you go look in your range.
So why are we not offering that to subprime clients? Because what's happening in the industry right now is that, one, there's so much pressure from management to salespeople about sale, that oftentimes the culture of those stores are actually making this happen. And there's so much pressure into getting new deals done that your rep there, when your client's telling you, I have bad credit, or hey, I might not get approved, the rep would rather not hear that. Sell the car anyway, just so their manager doesn't get mad at them. That's not the way to do it. Empower your team. You know, at my store, 30 days upstairs, you learn personality. The second half that you learn is credit. Yes, a salesperson, every one of my team knows how to read a credit bureau. Oh yeah, but they're not finance managers. Yes, and that's why my store does better. We're number 1 in Canada for a reason. Give the people the education. And truly, Michael, my only success in the last 18 years is I held teams together. I take pride. I had 7 years. I had the exact same team, salesman, finance. Granted, we're promoting them within. But I take pride in trying to teach people how to take my job. And the more people I try to teach how to take my job, the better I get. So one, empower your sales team to teach them the things that other managers might not be okay with. Empower them. Because one, you're going to get more guys that are going to know how to do everything. So in the event that they get that shot to be a subprime manager, it's not like you're not using your center lineman to be a fucking backup goalie out of the blue. Sorry, you're using your backup goalie for your goalie, and that's what I'm trying to get done. That's one. Number 2, and train them on how to be a listener. In subprime, I would almost say that my job was I was a professional boyfriend for some of it, because they all had their story, and you had to listen. You genuinely listen to their stories. Earn the fact that you're not just there to take their money. Listen to how they got there. What do they want? Hear them out, and truly try to show them that you are the expert. When I go into an Apple store, I pick up the phone. Then I start playing with it. And when I ask someone that question, I'm like, hey, can you tell me more about this phone? Then they start, not a problem. Are you sending more emails with it? Are you doing this? The whole thing works. All car dealerships need to start catering to subprime people in that matter. And if you're wondering how, the only way that you could actually truly give a prime experience to the entire subprime market that's coming in 2023, either you get the best sales trainers in the world and they all come and help you train every single person, which takes about 6 months to get them there, or you buy AITHR. AITHR. We are here to use automotive intelligence and the years of non-prime experience that we have. Our sales team has over 200 years on boots on ground on just subprime.
Wow.
So give us a call. We'd be more than happy. AITHR, AITHR X is our software. How many X's, how many more times can I give you more business? How many X's for your business?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. This is a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks for having me.